shall just...
Have Victoria to talk about when cultures crash.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. So today in the morning we discussed that usability is always overlooked by many open source projects. And I wanted to know why. So today I want to present research I did by reviewing academic papers in this area, usability in open source, and what I found out. First, I want to explain why I started this research. This research started with the fail to contribute to open source. It's my first contribution to open source that never got any attention in the project. So it happened a few years ago when I was working as a UX designer in a big corporation, working on Android phones for Asia. So not very satisfying job. I wanted to do something different. And I found an open source project I thought I could make much better. And I designed some work. I thought it was a low-hanging fruit. You know, there are so many issues you can fix immediately if you work as a UX designer. So I submitted some wireframes, I gave my feedback, research, and started to wait for feedback and never received any answer at all. So here's a in-review status for 3 years already. So back then I suspected that maybe it's not enough just to have a will to contribute to open source. Maybe there's something else that you need to know about open source in order to become part of it. So I started to review academic papers, and not only academic papers on that topic. And here I will present a short timeline of papers I found. I started my research from not very usability-related work. Many of you, I'm sure, know The Cathedral and the Bazaar by Eric Raymond. Have you read it? Yeah, so it's a great overview why open source and how open source is different from traditional software development. And it made me think maybe if you want to contribute UX to open source, it also has to be different from traditional development. About 2001, it's a few years after this work, papers on usability in open source started to appear, and there are more and more every year. You can find them later, I will give you a link. There are not only papers, but also bigger work, thesis work, like for example, there is a guide to usability in free software by Jan. Jan is here. It's a great work. So if you want to learn how you can apply usability methods, but you know nothing about usability, please learn it from that work. And more papers we can see from Finland University and others, great work. If you want to find this list, please refer to a repository. I maintain, I have already more than 30 papers. And if you happen to write one or you have a favorite one, please contribute. And we can collect all of them and learn more about usability in open source. And also, on a side note, if you love papers, I like to advertise this initiative. Maybe some of you know. Do you know Papers We Love? Okay, no, okay. It's a great meetup all over the world. I started one branch in Seoul dedicated only to UX papers. So we get together with UX papers and learn something that you don't have time to learn on your daily work time. So what does open source think about usability? And I found this great paper published in 2012. And researchers from Western University in Canada, they carried out a research to find out how developers in open source seek for users' feedback and what's the role of usability experts in open source environment. So what the survey shows that 81% of contributors to open source, please welcome. So the survey shows that 81% contributors to open source think that usability is important or highly important, and nobody thought it had no importance. However, it wasn't their priority when it comes to work. Only 30% of developers think they work on usability, but rest they don't think it's a quality attribute of software they should think about. 77% didn't consult any professional experts in usability, and even if they did, only 1/3 of them applied the results in their work. So, how come According to the results, it seems that usability is important to software developers in open source, but no one wants to work on it, or they don't consult experts in that area. So, okay, if developers don't want to work, maybe why there are not so many UX designers in open source? And I'm sure there are many designers here who have their reasons why. But I want to present some work I found in this paper. They have an interesting explanation. So what they did, they contributed usability research to some open projects and observed how core teams deal with those contributions. And they find these 3 different tactics. They give them names and call them gatekeeping tactics. So what developers do in order to avoid outsiders' contributions when it comes to usability. First gatekeeping tactics is called non-response, and it's what I had in my first contribution to open source. So like, well, it's your opinion. If you want, you can develop yourself. Otherwise, we don't care. So those contributions usually have no communications and no reaction. And another one, gatekeeping tactic, is social exclusion. And even though community accept contribution, but they don't accept the usability team as a part of core team, as a part of the process. And it's also discouraging because it's sometimes it's the only reason why we contribute to open source. We want to be the part of the community. And another gatekeeping tactic called false acceptance. It's when, please welcome. So it's when a community is enthusiastic about findings, apply them, but the original developer of the feature comes in and exercise his rights or her rights to change software and revert it back to original. It also happens several times. So it seems like that usability teams cannot that easily to contribute to open source projects, and they don't have any impact. And their message fell into deaf ears most of the time. And it's difficult to become part of the community. So why? And what I learned from the papers, there are at least 3 reasons that researchers find. And first of the reasons, it's culture. So there's a cultural aspect, and it's known that open source culture is known to be meritocratic. And participants gain merit from contributing and solving hard algorithmic problems. So for the more hard problem you solve, the more incentive, reputation incentive you get. And for usability experts, it's almost impossible to gain merit because it's not considered important. And even the structure of open source described in papers, often described as onion structure, you see behind me. And this structure represents how decision makers is distributed in the community. And in the center of the circle, it's where the all decision making power is concentrated, and it belongs to main developers. And we have more and more layers, and none of them is for designers. And one of the papers found an interesting solution for that. So this paper published in 2009 in Finland University. What they suggest to create an additional layer for usability experts where they could communicate, make decisions together, organize a core team that would communicate with the technical core team in a standard like open source layer. I'm not sure if it can work, if you can do it, but I see that open source design community is community that organized this room. It could be a place like the human level up there where designers get together and try to work with open source projects together to improve usability. Another reason also is how people with usability research background and people with open source background see their users. So in the community, when technical skills are the most appreciated, usability problems are found less interesting and less challenging. And in this environment, for open source developer, it's very difficult to emphasize with the user because he doesn't have the same technical skills. while all designers in the area, they know that that's by definition, users usually don't have any idea what they use, how it works, and you cannot know it all, even though you develop your own product. When you use other products, you don't have full understanding of the software. So as much as developers hope their user looks like this, most of the time the user looks like this. And however, it's changing, and the more and more I see great user surveys, like this Jupyter project published every year, their user survey, so they try to find out who their user and how to make the software better. Apache Spark, great report every year, so I encourage everyone to learn and do the same. Okay, I need to drink a little. And another reason, maybe the most important mentioned by papers, is the approach to development process, which seems to be completely different in open source and traditional UX design. So in open source projects, usually they call it mostly like bottom-up approach. It's where focus always on technical issues, and often projects come from a little feature and more features added, technically added, and usability issues bypassed completely. But in design, you usually start with a top-down approach, where usability designers, they have played the role of user representative from the beginning of the project. They have decision-making power and also equal to developers to make decisions. And that's very well understood by many big projects that have foundation behind. So the projects like, usually those projects, they would have guidelines, they have a great community like Mozilla, they have great resources where you can learn how to improve their product and contribute to usability. It's also much easier to use top-down approach with the smaller companies when you have you have projects where only few people contribute. So from the beginning they can care about usability and work on it better. For example, this project from Madrid have a beautiful Russian name, Taiga. It's one of the great examples when usability was considered from the beginning of the project, because the project had just a few contributors from one company, and that project looks great. By the way, team is here, over there, great product. Also the same company, yeah, great product. And also, I'm sure that everyone who knows about this one is looking forward for the launching day. This is open source UX box tool that is designed for prototyping, and we also really looking forward to that one. So it's easier when the team is 1 or 2 people, but how about all other projects that already exist there, and how an independent designer can contribute or become part of it? So it's not an easy question that all of us are trying to answer in this room today. But what I know for sure, that any community cannot grow unless it develops and improves. So I believe that both of the sides in this conversation, technical contributors and design contributors, have to find common ground. And it's not only for developers to learn about usability, it's for us designers to learn about culture and understand how we can become part of it. So since there are many designers in this room, I want to share my experience and what I learned how to participate in open source design. And if you want to become a part of the project, before anything, first you have to be a user of that project. And once you gain once you become part of the community and gain some visibility, you can start contributing. And it's not a good idea to contribute for usability issues, because sometimes, you know, those gatekeeping tactics could stop you from that. So it's much maybe easier to start with the improving documentation, report bugs, and be a vocal user of the community. And only after that, maybe it's a good idea to start do design job for open source projects in order to be a successful member of the community. So my final idea I want to share with you, so as much as we designers like to think that everyone needs to understand what usability is, I think what's more important for us to be part of the community and gain social capital with the community members, and also build trust by understanding how open source work. So it was my short talk. Thank you. And if you have any feedback, please welcome. Yeah, please.
So you described a way how to find your project as a designer. So I'm sitting here as an upstream developer, and actually I always have the question, how do I get a designer to work on my project, which is a designer who is maybe using my project, my software. Well, most of the work is for free, so I work for free on the project, so I don't have money to pay the designer. So do you have any recommendation for that?
So the question was how to find the designer on the project, right?
Yeah,
and
designer, so actually the other way around, like you just described.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. What we're trying to do with Open Source Design Initiative is to build foundations for designers to be able to join open source projects, because it's not easy. You've seen, like 3 years ago I started, it's still difficult for me to find the project and become a member. And I think the more we advocate for open source culture, the more designers can join and understand that they also can have impact in this and become part of the community. So I hope that that would be the foundation of our work in open source design. So the more we have people contributing, the more designers open source projects will have. I don't have a recipe, there's no silver bullet for that. So
No pool of designers.
there is a pool of designers. You can come to opensourcedesign.net, our community. Please check out our repository as well. We will advertise it many times today, but also if you want a designer working only in your projects, it should be a user of your project. Sometimes you can get some free work from open source design community, but hopefully you can get someone who can live with your project and contribute constantly. It would be the perfect case. And there are projects like that. There are many projects that get many designers, like Nextcloud. No, sorry. What's the name? What's the name of the project? Nextcloud, right? Sorry. Yeah. So there are many projects that have designers, but it's a long way of learning and understanding how you can impact and change the.
Yeah, and to also get the people attached consistently.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's just one theme, and then they're gone already again, and then you change something, and the theme has to be adapted, and no one takes over.
Yes. But I think this is the way we have to go through and grow and get more people in. Thank you.
This is not really a question, but I think there are exceptions when the designer cannot really use the software. Speaking from my own experiences, I was working with a South Korean open source company, and they were having a software which analyzes license compliance codes, issues, and security issues in software. And they wanted a brand identity about that. And I don't know a designer who would use that, but I think in this case it's important to explain, and maybe the designer should also be very curious about that and get more information about that to understand how the brand identity should look like. So I think there are some exceptions.
But it also brings a question regarding there are different types of design. For me, design is everything. Developing, you design software, there's usability design, there is also graphic design. So what I think the most complicated part in open source is graphic design, because usability is something you can measure. If you can measure, then it's much easier to distribute in open source and talk about it and find understanding. But when it comes to graphic design, I'm curious myself how to make it open, how to make it work in open source. So maybe it's a bit different question, and the most difficult question is graphic design, because again, I'm not sure many people can collaborate on graphical design, while I believe people can collaborate on usability issues and UX design.